Welcome to the 31st Annual Forum on Abuse and Neglect. My name is Wendy Hensley, and I'm the Senior Director of Programs and Partnerships at Mental Health America of Northwest Indiana. And I'm joined today by Dr. Marshila Harris, BSW Program Director and Assistant Professor at IUN. Before we get started, I wanted to just review a few housekeeping items. First, to let you know the chat has been disabled. If you wish to ask questions, please use the Q&A part of the presentation today. We will be checking the box for questions as we go along. And at the end of the presentation, we will enable the chat and a survey link will be provided. And we would really appreciate it if you would tell us about your experience and fill out that survey. If you are a licensed clinician and are needing CEUs, there is a section at the bottom of the survey for you to indicate that you need a CEU to be emailed to you. If you need a certificate of attendance, you will be able to download a certificate once you complete the survey. This forum series has also been approved for foster parent training, so you will need the certificate as proof of attendance. Also, all of our sessions will be recorded and shared on YouTube to view at a later time. So this is our final session in our series, and we have a really exciting program planned for our time together. And we are so grateful to all of the people who have helped put together this virtual series, from the amazing technical team at IUN to the volunteer committee members who worked so hard to keep this event fresh and impactful year after year. We also truly appreciate the attention and engagement of all of you overcoming that Zoom fatigue to be here with us today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Sandy Runkle. Sandy is Director of Programs for Prevent Child Abuse America and a longtime friend of the forum. And Sandy will get us started by introducing our next guest.
Thank you, Wendy. And it's obviously my honor to introduce Sharon Pierce. Sharon and I have worked together for 14 years now at Prevent Child Abuse Indiana in the Villages. And recently Sharon decided to move to the next journey, which is retirement. And she will be sorely missed, but also remain with us in spirit and certainly in our hearts after almost 30 years at the Villages. So it is my honor to introduce Sharon. The other piece that we want to mention to Sharon is not just thanking her for her service, but we wanted to kind of honor her in another way too. So Sharon, from everyone on the planning committee, of which we had the honor of being a part, Prevent Child Abuse Indiana this time, they wanted me just to say a few words. Thanks, so very much for your many trips to Northwest Indiana over the years to help out with the forum. Thanks for being a very special member of this year's planning committee. And thanks for 47 years of service to Indiana's children and families. We hope whenever you see pinwheels, you remember all the joy that you were able to bring to children and families in your long career. So gratefully, this is from our planning committee. And now is my honor to introduce Sharon Pierce.
Oh, how beautiful. And I've got my pinwheels with me. Thank you all so much. What a privilege. Lucky us, right? To be able to share the passion for being champions for children. And it's my privilege to introduce one of the nation's best and most visible and most dynamic champions for children. And I know Sandy and I have been thrilled from the moment Dr. Melissa Merrick took the reins at Prevent Child Abuse America, as have all of you. And I was thinking, Dr. Merrick was with us April 1st when we kicked off Child Abuse Prevention Month as a state. And here she is, as I often say, bookending Child Abuse Prevention Month on this very last day of April. Dr. Melissa Merrick, President and CEO of Prevent Child Abuse America, is just a phenomenal leader. She has more than 20 years of clinical research and leadership experience related to the etiology and prevention of child abuse and neglect. Prevent Child Abuse America, if you all didn't know, is the nation's oldest and largest nonprofit organization dedicated to the primary prevention of child abuse and neglect, reaching out to every adult, youth, and child to remind them that children are to be cherished. Every child is to be cherished. Previously, Dr. Merrick was a senior epidemiologist at the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, as we know it well over this last year. She is recognized as one of the country's foremost experts on adverse childhood experiences and has done a great deal to help the Department of Health and Human Services raise the level of awareness throughout the nation around adverse childhood experience, or ACEs as we call them, and what we can do not only to prevent them, but to mitigate them if and when they occur. Dr. Merrick successfully leverages her significant clinical and research experiences to communicate and disseminate the critical public health importance of preventing early childhood diversity. And she is one of the principal architects of an initiative that I know you'll be hearing about as she speaks with us, Thriving Families, Safer Children, a national commitment to the well-being of children. And it's truly an effort to reshape child welfare. Many of us who are passionate about prevention also have roots in child welfare, and how excited we all are to see this transformation so long in coming be a reality, with Indiana now as the second tier in this effort. More importantly, I think, than Dr. Melissa Merrick's resume is just her heart for our nation's children. She is married. She's the parent of 2 children who we understand were thrilled when they moved from Atlanta to Chicago and saw snow. But Melissa, I'm guessing they certainly didn't expect to see snow during Child Abuse Prevention Month. I think it was like April 17th or 18th when we were all just showered with 3 or 4 inches of snow this past year. So Melissa is a cheerleader for our nation's children. She believes in the power of prevention, and she believes in the power of partnerships. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Melissa Merrick. Melissa, we're thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and thanks to all of you in Indiana for having me twice this month. And I think Jennifer Jones, our Chief Strategy Officer at PCA America, also was able to join in one of these webinar series events. So it's just been wonderful. Thank you for all of the work that you all are doing year-round, but specifically in Child Abuse Prevention Month, to really raise awareness of the critical role that we all have and that we are all passionate about, I know, in having a stronger foundation for children and families. So I hope you can see my slides. The title of my comments today are really our Child Abuse Prevention Month theme, Growing a Better Tomorrow for All Children. But first, I have to say that you all know how to do that in Indiana. Specifically, I know because of this great woman, Sharon Pierce, who you all just heard from and are honoring today as she retires. Congratulations, Sharon, on your retirement. I am so thankful and blessed and honored to have been able to spend some time with you since I came onto this new role in July of 2019. I was able to visit you there in the bottom right is with Bart Klicka, Dr. Bart Klicka, who is our Chief Research Officer. And we took a trip to visit Sharon and Sandy and the wonderful team at the Villages and at Prevent Child Abuse Indiana. And this top left picture is at our last national conference that was in person in Milwaukee, also in 2019. And unfortunately, we'll be virtual this year again, but we hope to see everyone in person soon. And we'll be talking a little bit about the conference and the opportunity we have to continue the conversation that we're going to start today. But Sharon, just thank you on behalf of all of Prevent Child Abuse America, but our nationwide state chapter network. I know that we all see you as such a tremendous leader and a fierce advocate for our nation's children, all children. And I'm just so humbled to be on this virtual stage with you today, Sharon.
Thank you so
Congratulations.
much. What a privilege. And I always say we're the lucky ones. We're the blessed ones because we get to love every single day that we're coming to work, what we do and what our work stands for. So you all have surprised me. You've humbled me. I can't thank you enough. And I'm here for the long haul. I'm a Nana now, more time for Nana time, as we say, but a parent and always a lover of children. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sharon. And we're already missing Sharon, but we don't let her go. She's still helping us and serving as a peer reviewer for our other state chapter work. So anyway, congratulations and thank you to Sharon. And as you all know, and you heard, the mission of Prevent Child Abuse America and all of our affiliates is really to prevent the abuse and neglect of our nation's children. So we're really on the front end. We want to really try to create the conditions and the foundations that really don't allow child abuse and neglect to affect families in the first place, because we really envision a world where children can grow up happy, healthy, and prepared to succeed. But we know that children are safer with their families than from their families when their families are supported and strengthened and nurtured. And they live in wonderful communities that are supported and nurtured, and that we have policies in our nation that support children and families to reach their maximum health and life opportunities. So we do this at PCA America through our 4 strategic pillars. Obviously, our nationwide state chapter network, like the Villages and PCA Indiana. Also, our evidence-based home visiting model, Healthy Families America. HFA is in 600 sites around the country and in Israel and about 38 states. And they're such an important part of our work as well. Policy and advocacy is a key lever in this kind of comprehensive approach. And then really bringing awareness, not just to the issues of child abuse and neglect, but to the prevention solutions. So we really are engaged in all of this work fluidly, and they're all important pieces, and they all represent opportunities for partnership around lifting up family voice and community voice, lived expertise. You know, it's fine to have all the degrees, and we need science. And of course, the science is so strong in this area. And we're going to talk a little bit about some science, but we know that we have to listen with humility and with our minds and our hearts to our families about what are the challenges, but what are really the prevention opportunities. Also, at the key to all of this work is really this commitment to race and other forms of equity. Really, that's not a piece of the work. It is really embedded at the core of our work, and we're going to talk a lot about that this morning as well. And so, again, growing a better tomorrow for all children together. This is our 2021 CAP month theme. And what I really like about it is, the imagery is so positive. It's, spring has come, even in Chicago, it's nice and sunny out here, and, the flowers are blooming, but it really highlights that every day we all of you, 130 of you on already this morning, all of you help positive childhood experiences take root. And what an opportunity we have when we actually work together to figure out what's the soil that we need to provide for, the best blossoms in the future. What are the ingredients, right? What are the necessary pieces? And again, this to me means it shows outright that no single organization, no single entity, no single discipline, certainly no single parent or family can do this work alone. We all need to be working together. And in fact, there is a role for all of us. In fact, I would say many of us have multiple roles, right? I have the role as a mom, I have a role as a scientist, as a leader, as a community member. I have multiple roles to help positive childhood experiences take root. And what I also really love in this imagery is that it's very hopeful, right? And I was trained as a clinical psychologist originally before I sort of drank the public health juice, which then once you drink it, you're, hooked for life. But, at the core, hope is such a strong and studied psychological phenomenon. It really means that we are able to see a positive outcome, even if in the present it doesn't seem so positive, right? And we know that it's something, people that are able to engender hope and experience hope have better health outcomes. But really, we know that the people that are most likely to be hopeful for the future are ones that in their past, they can reach back into their past and think about another time when they were overloaded or stressed out or things seemed really bleak. And they were able to, at the other end, it did turn out to be positive. So, in this topic and for the comments this morning, I would like to challenge us to think, what makes us as a field, a child abuse and neglect prevention field, what makes us actually hopeful that we can prevent child abuse and neglect? I think still the dominant narrative in this country is that, oh, child abuse and neglect happens to those people, to that family, that poor family, that young mom, whatever. But we know we can prevent child abuse and neglect. How do we change that narrative? How can we feel hopeful that narrative will change? And I think we have to do what I just described. We have to go back into our past as a field and see what we are founded on, right? What are we based on? What are our core purposes in this field? And so I think it's helpful to have a little review of the history here. If you think about child abuse and neglect prevention as a field, it's still fairly young, right? So if a generation is about 20 years, our first generation of this work was really in the, between the 60s and the 80s, where we really wanted to raise awareness of this issue. I mean, it was 1962 when Dr. Henry Kemp published his seminal paper, The Battered Child Syndrome, that really brought awareness mostly to physical abuse, but awareness to, doctors could actually see signs in their clinic with their family that should, put off like a red flag that maybe this family is experiencing some challenges, and maybe we have an opportunity to identify these families early and help them. 1972 up top, that's a picture of Donna Stone. She is the woman who founded what is now the organization that I have the honor of leading, Prevent Child Abuse America, but really with this vision of a future in which no children are ever abused and neglected, right? And really wanted to bring awareness to that mission. And then in 1979, the first ever Surgeon General's report that even called out violence in the home or violence at all as a public health problem, as something that was, in our purview to really try to raise awareness about, but then also to really address. And so what did we do in the second generation? We, raised awareness in this first generation, and like good stewards of, we want to save those children, we went straight to intervention. Right. And this is not me saying that intervention is not important or a critical piece of the prevention continuum. Of course it is. I shared that I'm trained as a clinical psychologist, so I'm used to, this idea of you help one family at a time, and that is important and will always be a critical piece. But we went straight there. We went, straight to, messaging more broadly, kind of the blame and shame messaging, really, like don't take it out on your kids, And so then if a family was experiencing violence, the unintended consequence of that kind of messaging is that we were villainizing those families or stigmatizing those families. Like no kidding, families weren't gonna, put up their hand and say, I need help, because we were saying that, there was something wrong with them, as opposed to now what we've learned in a trauma-informed or, more trauma-informed community. It's what happened to you, not what's wrong with you. But Healthy Families America, our evidence-based signature home visiting model, started in 1992, about to celebrate its 30th year next year when PCA America celebrates our 50th year. And so we went straight to services. But at the end of this, generation, I would say, was the landmark CDC Kaiser Permanente Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, or ACEs study. I presume most people know about the study, so we won't go into great detail, except to say it was a study that among all insured mostly white, mostly well-educated people in Southern California. And I have to say, I did my doctoral training in San Diego. It is my happy place. I belong in Southern California. But in this really have population, when people asked questions about what they experienced under the age of 18, even in this population, again, that many of us would see as sort of, a privileged population, they still experience, about 60% of them experience at least an ACE score of 1, things like, child physical abuse, sexual abuse, growing up in a home with parental incarceration, with mental illness in the home, substance use, these kinds of household challenges. Also in these data, if you had an ACE score of 1, you were somewhere between 80 and 85% more likely to have additional ACEs, right? And it wasn't just that ACEs were common. It was that the more ACEs you had, your risk went up for having a whole host of negative health outcomes. It's now to date, there's been over 60 health outcomes associated with early adversity. So it was really that cumulative impact. The more ACEs you had, especially in the absence of protective factors, we weren't really talking about that in that generation of this work. But, we know that the more ACEs you had, the more likely you were to experience negative health and well-being outcomes. In fact, 5 of the 10 leading causes of death in this country among adults has their roots in early childhood. So then in the next generation, we built evidence. We went back and said, okay, we maybe jumped the gun. We've been going straight to intervention. Let's actually build the evidence. Let's understand more about the mechanisms. Like, why is it that these early adverse childhood experiences and other types of early adversity really get under the skin and really, can manifest as chronic disease later in life, mental health disease, substance use, risky health behaviors, right? So it's 2006, the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard with Jack Shonkoff and all of his work in building evidence around toxic stress and how it affects brain development and even how our immune systems, endocrine systems function, even the way how our genes express themselves, have their roots in these kinds of adverse childhood experiences. 2001 CDC received its first ever appropriation from Congress to even study violence at all as a public health problem, and the appropriation remains very small. Luckily, we also now have an appropriation to CDC about $4 million for ACEs, right? That's new. That's, just in the last year or so. So we just continued building evidence, continuing to really show the impacts on a wide range of health and well-being outcomes. And so it's because of that history that we can be hopeful that finally in this next generation, we can probably be in the business of actual prevention. We can make prevention the priority. And again, it doesn't mean that these other generations of work are not continued. Of course, it's important and critical that we continue to raise awareness. And we do that every CAP month, and we do it year round, of course, but also raising awareness of the prevention solutions. So, people learn about ACEs, okay, but now what? What are we going to do about it, right? So our interventions are being studied, and what are the key ingredients? What are those things that make HFA be able to prevent child abuse and neglect and intimate partner violence, right? What are the key ingredients in any intervention? And then we continue to build evidence and the public health approach to really, again, make prevention the priority in the next generation. And so much of this, I think, this last year has been tremendously challenging for all families, for all people. But one of the silver linings of this moment in our shared history, just being alive in this moment in time, is that we're really finally seeing what public health is in action, right? I think public health can be pretty abstract and people are like, I don't really know what public health is. But, this definition is my favorite one of it. It's really what we as a society do collectively, not one organization at a time or one, professional at a time or one parent at a time, but what we all do collectively to assure the conditions in which all people can be healthy. So just like early in the pandemic, if I wore my mask, but my neighbor didn't, we know we weren't being as effective in protecting everybody's health, right? But to assure the conditions in which all people can be healthy means these roots of this tree. I hope people have seen this graphic before. This is from Wendy Ellis and her colleagues in the Building Community Resilience work, and she says, and asserts, okay, what if what we've been doing always in this like ACEs space is we've been observing these leaves and we've been measuring these leaves, right? The ACEs, the traditional ACEs. But really, it's the roots that give rise to the leaves that we observe. So until we get to those adverse community environments, she calls it, this is what I would call conditions, till we get to the root causes, the structural and social determinants of health, all of these isms that exist at the bottom layer, until we make that part of our work, and again, I argue that that is at the core of our work in this area, until we really, I think we've been hearing a lot of language, disrupt and dismantle those systems of oppression, of all the isms, racial inequity, poor housing quality and affordability, community disruption, lack of opportunity in general, those are the conditions that are promoting the ACEs we observe. And when you layer on now COVID and this moment of extreme job loss, housing instability, food insecurity, lack of access to any of your primary protective factors, right? In this time of physical distancing, it has been even more difficult to stay emotionally and socially connected, which we know are powerful protective factors year round. So, they've updated this graphic, but I've even heard people use the ACE acronym to be adverse COVID experiences, right? Because we would imagine that might impact our biological and neurobiological processes in much the same way as the traditional ACEs. But I've also heard people about these conditions, again, talk about ACEs as adverse colonial experiences. So again, trying to invoke all the historical traumas, the things that are in our body, right? Whether we know it or not. And, we talk a lot in this field about the dual generation approach to prevention. But, our tribal colleagues and leaders would argue that it takes 7 generations before, things that happened 7 generations ago to really express themselves in our genetic code later. So all of these things are critically important because we know that when we measure ACEs, right, those leaves, and however they came to be, we measure them. We know that the more that you have, the more likely you'll have mental health problems, maternal health issues, reproductive issues, infectious disease, risk behaviors, chronic disease, and it can affect whether we're able to complete high school, whether we're employed as an adult, whether we as an adult live in poverty. I mean, these are powerful connections, but the hope here and the hopeful reality here is that we know that if we prevent ACEs in a population, we can prevent up to 21 million cases of depression, up to 1.9 million cases of heart disease, the leading cause of death in this country, and up to 2.5 million cases of overweight and obesity. And in fact, we can, expect reductions in all 14 of these negative health and life outcomes. This is from the Vital Signs report that came out in late 2019. I had the honor of serving as the primary author on this report. But again, you see across health topics, across health risk behaviors like smoking and drinking, and across socioeconomic challenges, if we can prevent adverse childhood experiences like child abuse and neglect, we can prevent a whole host of negative health and life outcomes. And we know how to do it. We know how to do it. Prevention is possible. It used to be early on when I was the lead scientist of the ACEs study for CDC for many years, and people would be learning about it for the first time. And in any kind of conference or conversation that you had with folks, people would be adding up their ACE score, right? And they'd be saying, oh my gosh, I have 8 ACEs, or I have 6 ACEs, or whatever. And there's some power in that, right? There is some understanding of that the things that happened to me that that have changed the way my brain grew and developed. But now that I know, I can understand those linkages, and I can, again, be resilient, and I can thrive with the necessary supports in place that make that more likely. So there can be some benefit to that, but it can also be sometimes interpreted as ACEs are destiny, which we know they are not. ACEs are not deterministic. We know that many people have very high ACE scores and are doing just fine. Why? Because they have a lot of protective factors in the family, in their community, and in society at large, right? So I think it's more our opportunity now to recognize that ACEs has gotten us to understand that, goodness, one strategy for preventing cardiovascular disease shouldn't just be proximal to your diet as an adult, but maybe should be, going all the way back to prevent early adversity and have the healthiest kids that can go on to be the healthiest adults of tomorrow, right? So I think it has really done wonders in that space, but I just, I would be remiss if I didn't call out that they are not deterministic. And in fact, we know evidence-based strategies that can prevent ACEs and child abuse and neglect. So this is from CDC's leveraging the best available evidence tool for preventing ACEs. CDC also has these technical packages on preventing child abuse and neglect, youth violence, sexual violence, suicide, and intimate partner violence. And then this one is the cross-cutting one on preventing ACEs. And you can see 6 particular buckets here. So strengthening economic supports for families. Strengthening household financial security, family-friendly work policies, these things that just help take the edge off of families, concrete supports, powerful protective factors and prevention strategies. Social norms that protect against violence and adversity. I said this before, but it's worth saying again that right now the dominant narrative in this country is it's that poor mom, that bad mom, that young mom, whatever, Black and brown family, whatever. All of these stereotypes, and we act like something is wrong with them, versus the real norm that we all have a role to play in keeping children safe and well and thriving. And that is our work, right? That is a powerful prevention strategy. Obviously, ensuring a strong start for families and children and families through evidence-based home visitation, like Healthy Families America, through high quality and affordable childcare. Childcare has been such a stress for families in this time of a global pandemic. As if parenting is not stressful enough, parenting during a global pandemic, during a moment of acute racial and civil unrest, it has been so challenging for families, and then not to even have access to childcare, let alone be able to afford childcare. And, parents in this time, in this moment, we've had to sometimes choose between taking the risk of physical health issues through COVID, by sending kids to school versus keeping them at home. And then what about their social and supports and friends and sports and all of the things that really are good for their brain and good for them to focus in school? It has been, because there is no perfect decision in this time, not to mention the digital divide and such that was exposed in this time, right? Where we knew at Prevent Child Abuse America and with our chapters that families needed data, devices, and diapers, these things to help them stay connected with their family support workers and people that could really help them cope with the trauma of, again, just going through this time, but, compounding and adding to whatever traumas existed even before COVID. Teaching skills, connecting youth to caring adults and activities, and lessening harms to prevent future risk. These are, I would say, the ones that we have typically done in this field. These are more individual level. still super important. And in fact, CDC recommends and says that if you're going to be engaged in comprehensive approaches to child abuse and neglect, you would actually have strategies in each and every one of these buckets. So, I sometimes get, Dr. Merrick, if I can only do one of these things, which one do I do? I think, again, it's good to look for evidence-based strategies that, have can help you reach multiple of your state level, health and well-being goals. But again, comprehensive approaches would argue you would be involved in all of this work. And there's also this thing, and you saw it invoked a little bit in our CAP Month toolkit and sort of theme for Child Abuse Prevention Month, but this notion that positive childhood experiences also help prevent ACEs, but also mitigate the negative health outcomes that come from ACEs. So this now they're using the HOPE acronym to really mean healthy outcomes from positive experiences. Dr. Bob Sagi, who is on the board of Prevent Child Abuse America, I would say, is sort of one of the brainchilds of this movement in our country. But what is great is that there's already data that shows that positive childhood experiences protect adult mental health. So people that have more, again, in the same way that ACEs, the more you had, the more likely you might have negative health outcomes. Here, it's just the opposite. The more positive childhood experiences you have, the lower, here it was 72% lower odds of depression or poor mental health, and 52% lower odds of depression or poor mental health in the other sample on the second there. So it's really powerful that this is budding now. Here, I think, is really compelling. These are all people that have 4 or more ACEs, but you can see of the ones that had very few positive childhood experiences, 0 to 2, 60% of that sample had depression or poor mental health, versus ones that had 6 to 7 positive childhood experiences, even with 4 or more ACEs. Only about 20% of the sample experienced depression or poor mental health. So, here they offer another, the 4 building blocks of HOPE. These are kind of the domains that they're suggesting we can have positive childhood experiences take root and take hold. But, the protective factors, CDC has essentials for childhood, safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments. I kind of always say, I'm kind of model agnostic on what protective factors you really boost. The fact is, we just need to be boosting all of that good relational, environmental stuff for children and families so that they can go on to achieve their maximum health and life potential. And in fact, we know that even in this time of a global pandemic, positive childhood experiences are happening in families. This is survey data from a survey the American Academy of Pediatrics did together with Prevent Child Abuse America and Tufts and the CDC, where there's going to be 3 different waves. These are data from the first wave, about 3,000 parents. And this was specific to parents who reported that they were educating their children at home, or that their kids were home virtually learning on Zoom and whatever, and parents were also home. So here is one of the times where I feel hopeful, because I see that data, when you analyze data, it actually reflects what my own personal experience is that this time is tremendously stressful. I mean, we have 4 people in our house alone that are on Zoom at any given time. That means that, 3 of us don't have good connections at any given time and can, jump off, and all of that is super stressful. But we've also been able to have lunch together some days that we normally wouldn't, or I haven't been traveling as much, so I've been able to be home more. So the 2 can occur at the same time, and in fact, you see 29% of families saying, yeah, it's stressful, but I also feel some positive childhood experiences happening in this time. So to me, that's very hopeful. These are data from the American Psychological Association's national survey. And here, overall, people are stressed out. That's what most all of these graphics show. But the bottom left says, even though COVID is a significant stressor for most Americans, around 71% still say they feel hopeful about the future. So to me, this is super powerful because it's like, gosh, I can't even imagine a more stressful time than this past year. And that's that I have plenty of resources. I'm employed, I have internet, my children are safe and healthy, and, and still I'm stressed out every day, but that you can experience stress and still be hopeful about what's to come and what we can do together. That is really powerful. And that is really what gave rise to Thriving Families, Safer Children, a national commitment to child and family well-being. PCA America is so proud to be one of the 4 national partners that kind of founded this kind of collective movement. But certainly this movement, again, started long before any of us, right? People have been calling for change in the system and how we approach families. Why is it that so many of our families have to wait until they find themselves in crisis before our systems can get them the supports and services that they need? That's ridiculous. That is not cost effective. It doesn't make logical sense, but yet that's what we've been doing for decades. So this extraordinary moment, again, provides an opportunity to shift that narrative from child welfare, child protection, to child and family well-being. What are the supports that we need year-round in communities that can help protect against ever experiencing child abuse and neglect and other adversities in the home? Obviously, we have a way to go before we can say, okay, we're ditching this and we're going to this, right? I mean, this is not even the thought here. The thought here is, how do we, again, get behind those conditions that families need to thrive, that kids need for healthy brain development and just overall child development, right? This is a whole prevention continuum, but it's really exciting that across the U.S. Children's Bureau, that's child welfare for our whole country. Casey Family Programs, a large TA provider of child welfare systems, the Annie E. Casey Foundation, philanthropy, and Prevent Child Abuse America coming together to partner with communities. And we're proud to be partnering with Indiana in round 2 of this work to really have create a more just and equitable system that really race equity and the authentic engagement of people with lived expertise are foundational to this change, right? We can't from the top say, okay, community X, you do Y. This is what you're doing wrong. This is what you need to fix. Please, these top-down approaches we've been trying forever. And if we always do what we've always done, we're going to still have the number of kids and families in child welfare as we do. We need to do something different, and we need to be, again, listen with humility and with our hearts and minds to our communities who are the experts on what their assets are and what challenges they experience and need help solving, right? So how can we co-design these things with communities is such a key to this work. And round 2 really has a strong focus on policy or system reform. We know that policies are so important because we know that there are some contexts and conditions that help families reach their maximum health and life potential, and others that frankly just don't meet the mark. We also know that if people are struggling if people don't have paid leave, right, to stay home when they're sick or to be with their families when needed. If people don't have access to that, how are they going to go to whatever parenting program that we recommend them to go to? They can't even take part in and have experienced the impacts of even evidence-based strategies if they're worried about how they're paying their rent or how they're getting their next meal. So, this idea of really building a strong policy component to this work is something new and energizing to all the partners involved. And what I'm happy about is it also matches with what we've learned from the framing science. So PCA America recently partnered with the Alliance for Strong Families and Communities to update the frameworks report on how should we be messaging childhood adversity, right? If we want to make the case for policies and strategies that we need so that kids have access to safe, stable, nurturing environments, then we have to widen our framing to include the factors that actually shape those environments, you know? And so we need to be telling a story that really sparks a sense of collective responsibility and that offers a realistic sense of hope. Again, hope is the theme here. You know, we need to be thinking about preventing the overload of stress and never talking about adversity without also talking about healing and resilience. I know this is something that is powerful and that you all do very well in Indiana, and especially have done it this whole month through this series, right? Like, how do we can never talk about adversity without resilience, but we always need to include a proven or promising policy solution in the next generation of this work of messaging and of really making prevention the priority. And so obviously we have a chance right now with some historic investment in children and families through the American Rescue Plan Act, you know, where we have about $250 million in community-based child abuse prevention, or CBCAP funding. This is emergency 2-year funding, but trust me, many of us, PCA America and all of our partners are advocating, you know, our ask for CAPTA reauthorization, you know, the big sort of, you know, broad legislation in our country that supports prevention in this area is $750 million, right? So we know that this is, yes, a 400% increase, but when you really look at the data in fiscal year 21, that means that we were investing 82 cents per child per year in prevention. 82 cents per child per year. It's obviously not enough. We need to be creating a prevention infrastructure, a way of supporting children and families before they find themselves in crisis. And we need all of you working together and bringing in new partners into this work to make those things happen. Prevention happens in partnership, and I feel hopeful that we are able to grow new and different, unusual partners into this work, media partners, business partners, chambers of commerce. You know, what is their role? Not everyone thinks of themselves the way I do. I'm a child person. I'm a child psychologist. I have children. I'm in this work because I believe in the power of childhood and the fact that childhood and the things that happen in childhood, they last a lifetime. But even people that maybe that's not their dominant hat, we can partner with them. We can show them how, don't you want a healthy, productive workforce today and in the next generation? Invest in childhood adversity prevention. Right? Do you want the next leaders, the next generation of parents to be healthier and happier and more fulfilled and more thriving? Invest in child abuse prevention now. The actions we take and the choices we make today stay with us in a profound way across the lifespan, but again, into the next many, many generations. So we really have such an opportunity here. Because what would happen if we actually replace those conditions, those roots that I talked about? You know, if we replace all the isms, all the systems of oppression, we replace them with therapy, with jobs, with a livable wage, with community, with support, love, you know, faith. What would be the leaves that we would observe instead of ACEs? We would observe things like peace, hope, resilience, self-esteem, thriving, right? All the things that I know all of you are in this work to achieve. So I hope that you join us. We have our national conference of Prevent Child Abuse America. The theme this year is Transforming Our Tomorrow. Again, a very hopeful, forward-looking theme. At that link there, the call for proposals is open. So we'd love to hear about the wonderful work that's happening in Indiana. This is not just research at this conference. This is also, if you have a model program, I heard in another state, what state was it? New York. In New York, they have now using some of their community-based child abuse prevention grants to do a family resource center, but embed a children's museum within the Family Resource Center, and then that's where they would propose to do supervised visitation for non-custodial parents in the most a non-threatening, non-stigmatizing way at a museum where kids can be kids. We want to hear about these kinds of innovations. I know that they're happening all across Indiana, but please come to our, submit your proposals there. Our opening plenary will be Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, the Surgeon General of California, and certainly an ACE pioneer in this space. A lot, I'm sure people know of her work. So join us. We have some other excellent speakers, but in particular, we've created a community where we can share and learn and grow together. Again, I think all of this is about lifting up everyone's collective voice. We all have a role to play in preventing child abuse and neglect and in really transforming our tomorrow. So, together we can prevent child abuse, and we know that childhood lasts a lifetime. I'm just so thankful to be with you all in Indiana on this last day of CAP month. But obviously our work is not in April alone, it's year round. We are gonna really continue to have a steady drumbeat on raising awareness, but really raising awareness around the prevention solutions. Prevention is possible. There's so much hope to bear in this space, but it takes each and every one of you. So thank you for the work you do each and every day.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Dr. Merrick. And we will open it up for chat questions. I'm going to start with our first question. What policy developments at the state and federal level are most important for prevention going forward?
It's a great question. And I will say, you know your state better than I know your state in particular, but I will say that we know providing economic supports for families is such an evidence-based strategy. It helps take a little bit of the edge off. It helps people have their basic needs be met in their family so that they can really attend to positive parenting strategies and all the good stuff that our programs are really helping them to learn and develop. Right? So things like paid leave, things like earned income tax credits, things like childcare subsidies and childcare pass-throughs. We know that states that allow 100% of the childcare payment to pass through to the custodial parent, as opposed to reimbursing the state themselves for their temporary assistance for needy family benefits. States that allow 100% of that pass through have 10% reductions in child neglect. I mean, it's an evidence-based strategy. We also know for every dollar increase in livable wage, that's also associated with 10% reductions in child neglect in states. So I think there's a whole compendium of policy solutions that you can consider. We do have some great resources on our website, preventchildabuse.org. We have a federal policy agenda, but we also have a state policy agenda with recommended policy efforts.
Another question is, first of all, thank you for a wonderful presentation. But positive parenting as primary prevention is important, but so unwanted. Thoughts or suggestions on out-of-the-box places to offer free evidence-based courses?
Yeah, it's another great question. And I think this is where things like family resource centers or community cafes and these kinds of models where, there's a safe space, it's not stigmatized, it's not mandated that you go there for this particular intervention. And in fact, so many of these family success centers that are around the country that I know about, don't even really advertise. It's all word of mouth. Like a mom will go there, she'll find a safe space that's welcoming and warm. And she sees that, there's many different kinds of resources and information provided. And then she goes back into her community and tells her friends about it, right? And then it's really like a welcoming space. I mean, I've seen places where this works really well because, people don't, again, this is more too about lifting up the kind of community stakeholders and the community voice in your work, right? So if people perceive this as, oh, this is something that organization's coming into my community, they have no relationships in my community, and they want to tell me what I'm doing wrong and what I need to be doing better, please, that's not how you gain someone's trust or interest in our topics, right? So instead, it's about eliciting the solutions. What are the kinds of parenting tips or strategies that community wants at this moment in time, right? I think too, when we're in this time of like tremendous contextual trauma every day, listening to the news can traumatize you. I mean, for sure. And the just what's happening all over. It's like, my mind on any given day may not be open to like talking about parenting. I want to talk about race and, homicides and killings and all this other stuff that is like so proximal to my experience. So sometimes it's about recognizing that what we're offering is not always what's needed at that exact moment. And so I think that's where it's, we have to listen and we have to be creative. So I think these safe spaces, these non-stigmatizing, non-judgmental spaces are really important.
So as a administrator for our local Healthy Families program, Healthy Families is very near and dear to my heart, as is all of our wonderful home visiting models that we have operating here in Northwest Indiana. Can you tell us about some of maybe the strategic innovations that you see in the future for Healthy Families and home visiting in general? And then also, I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on virtual services. Many of us have shifted in the pandemic to virtual services, and it's proven to be difficult for some families, but a real lifeline for others who might have barriers to typical access. So what have we learned over this year?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question, Wendy. And in fact, we've learned so much, right? I think last year, this time, we didn't even really know how long we were not going to be able to be in homes, how long we would have to be physically distanced. I don't think any of us could have guessed that it would be this long, and we're still not back. But with that, we pivoted, right? Everything, as you know, to virtual or phone-based services. And then that again highlighted the need for data and devices for our families to be able to stay connected to their home visitors. We also had to pivot the way we train our supervisors and our workforce, right? All of that, we developed a learning management system. And what we've learned is like, oh my gosh, like some of this is working really well for some families and for some supervisors. I mean, from the training end, it has been wonderful how many people we can train. The feedback that we've gotten about, they feel like it's as robust as, the training that was like a 5-day in-person training, right? They can do it on their own time throughout the day. Like once their kids are on Zoom, they can learn, versus trying to navigate all of that. Obviously the cost effectiveness of this. But I also love the piece where you said, for some families, this virtual connection is really working well. And how can we, whenever we're on the other side of this, how can we harness some of those opportunities and maybe have like a hybrid approach, right? I think being in homes is really important sometimes, but I think, I've even heard of times where we are now able to stay and support families that in the past we wouldn't have been able to. So for example, a mom had a new baby and was having, virtual home visits, and then her college opened back up in person. So she was going off to college and took her young baby with her. And typically we would have had to suspend services because we couldn't go into her home anymore if she moved to another state. But now we could continue to support her during this like transition period, during a time of really tremendous stress and newness and, potential difficulty. And so I agree with you. I think we have to be creative in the future too, and recognize that not every single family needs the same kind of home visitation services. I mean, I think that that's something that's really powerful in the HFA model anyway, because it is very like, it's not a one size fits all. There's a continuum of services and supports that we provide. But this is yet another way, like, maybe it's technology is here to stay, right? And maybe we have this flexibility. I think it's wonderful to be thinking about these challenges, but as, what are the lessons? What are the innovations that have come out of this, chaotic time?
Another question that we have is about what prevention strategies, how do they differ when you're accessing or working with a rural population versus a more urban population? Here in Lake County, we are part of an urban area right outside Chicago. But the rest of the state, has a lot more rural populations. So what kind of differences do you see in those prevention strategies based on geography?
Yeah, well, we know that there are always challenges, right? Getting our evidence-based approaches and services to rural populations. One, just from the concrete, like transportation issues, right? And sometimes it can be very far between, the service provider and the home that you're trying to provide. Again, potentially another silver lining of the virtual implementation of some of these supports, right? As long as we can make sure we have data even accessible in some of our most rural communities, but that's one. But I think too, it's the same, strategy where we have to listen, like what are the needs in that rural community, right? And not assume that all rural communities look the same or have the same challenges. So, I think that that's a great question for you to give me your thoughts on, Wendy, from the HFA side, given that I'm not, I've been far removed from the direct service provision for many years.
Yes, I am definitely in the urban center of the work, so I do not have as much experience as some of my colleagues throughout the state would, working in our more rural areas. But I know it's a challenge when there are not as many resources. So sometimes those prevention services really are one of the only lifelines that families have access to. Thank you. Okay, let's get back to this chat. We did have a question asking where someone can get their hands on some pinwheels. Those pinwheels are coveted.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are used to attending this session in person, you know that if you turn in your survey at the end, we provide you with a pinwheel. So I would say, watch out for next April. We hope to be live and in person, and you will get your pinwheel, we promise.
and you can buy pinwheels year round on our website, preventchildabuse.org. I always, at every meeting, people are always like, oh, I want one of those lapel pins. People love them. So you can always find them on our website as well.
How do we as a community normalize prevention services? So much of the work that we do is voluntary, right? And we spend time trying to get families excited about participating. So what kind of steps can we as a community, we still see, half of the folks not feeling like it's going to be meaningful to them. So how can we kind of change that at the community level so that people are more willing or able to participate in the services that are available?
Well, yeah, I think that this is a real cultural shift that's required, right? I think, like, how cool would it be if we had Fortune 500 companies, for example, offering Healthy Families America as a benefit for their employees, right? Then it would be all of a sudden seen as like such an asset, like, oh my gosh, well, that fancy, employer has that benefit. Like and that exists in my community. I'm so lucky to have it, right? So I think even just this expansion of it, it's also, still if across the 10 leading home visiting models, we're only meeting about 3% of the families who could actually benefit from home visitation services. So some of it is about expanding where people are seeing home visitation, right? And how prevalent it is. I mean, that's just looking at HFA. Obviously, other services the same way. As we have more parenting classes in libraries or in gyms and in places where there's on-site childcare, right? I mean, removing some of those barriers. I know that, programs that are able to offer dinner, for children to come while their parents are like learning these parenting tips, that helps. Again, anything that we can do to really be in community. And again, in communities that we have relationships with that want us and that are also at the planning table. You know, I heard something really profound on a recent Thriving Families conversation where some, you know, parents who have lived, you know, through being in child welfare and such said that sometimes they feel like programs come into their community and it's like being invited to a party. And then when you get to the party, you see that everyone already ate dinner and that you weren't invited for the whole thing. You were invited maybe for the after party, right? But like we need to invite people when you're picking the color scheme and you're planning the menu and, you know, way before, you know, dinner is served. I thought that was like a really compelling way of understanding that we need to be listening to our community leaders, to see what is it that they want. Where is it that they want these parenting, you know, programs or services or other kinds of programming to be offered, you know, to really capitalize on our moment in prevention. I also, you know, heard something really interesting recently. You know, I've been giving a lot of talks throughout this month, but I learn just as much on these conversations as I hope people learn in some of the things I say. But they said that they, you know, realize that until we ourselves as service providers, until we can ask for help without self-judgment, that we can't really help others without judging them. I thought that was really profound because I'm a very type A person. It's really difficult for me to ask for help. And in fact, Sharon knows this, but, you know, in this, you know, time of trying to do something COVID safe for my young children and, you know, some winter fun in Chicago. I'm from Miami. So, you know, I have no business ice skating, but I took my kids ice skating in the park. And anyway, I broke my ankle in 3 places. I had surgery. No. I'm on crutches. I can't walk. And it's been a very humbling time for me because it's like, I have to ask for help and I have to, you know, I mean, I have to ask for help and it's so difficult. But then why is it so difficult? Like, why do I think that asking for help makes me less, I don't know what, you know, less of a strong, independent person? Or do I think it makes me weak? Like, you know, and so I think some of it comes from, we have to give ourselves like, you know, this non-judgment. We need to give ourselves the grace too, that we don't have all the solutions, right? And that we have a lot to learn from other people. So I think just this whole field and this whole time is such a time that I hope that we're developing empathy for one another and we're recognizing that all parents need support. We just may need a little bit of different kinds of support on any given day.
I think that this is our final question. We know that Prevent Child Abuse America has really been a leader in bringing equity to the forefront of all the work that you are doing. So can you give us maybe an example of where lived experience has made a big difference in policy or practice?
Yeah, you know, it's a tough question, an important question. I think equity, again, is difficult for some people to understand because it's like, well, first of all, we're in a really polarized time, right, in our shared history too. So some people say equity and they automatically think, oh, you know, I'm not about that. That's for someone else, you know. But what we know, and again, back to that tree graphic, if we know that those roots are giving rise to those leaves, then our work has to be in those structures and those structural determinants of health and social determinants of health. And so I think part of it is inviting people that have different perspectives or that, you know, are in a different part of their journey toward understanding and embracing equity as a goal, but also in their journey on really educating themselves about what all the pieces are that it would take for us to truly be about equity. And so conversations like this, or conversations with your boards or with your teams, your staff, your communities, that really include diverse perspectives, some people that have degrees, some people that don't, some people that look like me, some people that don't, some people that vote like me, some people that don't. And having those difficult conversations is fostering equity. You know, that is a concrete example of how we foster equity. So it's difficult. It's also getting used to being comfortable with discomfort. These are not easy conversations to have. I think it's also not something where we can say, okay, this is our goal for the year. Check, we achieved it, right? We did it. No, it's a journey. It's an arc of learning, but we have to we have to go there. I mean, that is the next generation of this work, is really making that one of our focal points.
Thank you so much, Dr. Merrick, for your work, for your efforts, for your leadership, and for joining us today. We're going to have you out in person someday soon, where we are not too far away from Prevent Child Abuse America headquarters. So at this point, we are...
Hi, everyone, and welcome back. We wanted to share again, some of you may remember that as we kicked off Child Abuse Prevention Month, very early on, I shared a pinwheel story that still touches me and that I will remember for the rest of my life. I've got my pinwheels here, but Sandy and I have been privileged over the years to do a number of partnerships with our Indiana Department of Correction. And you might think that's an unusual partnership. Remember, Dr. Melissa Merrick said prevention happens in partnerships, but so many, sadly, of the individuals who are in our correctional facilities, not just in Indiana, but throughout the country, were abused as a child, were neglected as a child, didn't have that parental figure, and in particular, didn't have that father figure. And one particular Child Abuse Prevention Month, when the offenders at Pendleton Correction Facility had saved their allowance, their meager allowance, to purchase pinwheels, so that as Sandy and I pulled up to do their child abuse prevention kickoff, there was a huge pinwheel garden to greet not only us, but each one of those offenders' family members, their spouses, their parents, the staff members who were coming in. And, you know, I don't think I'll ever forget that sight. And I'm sure, Sandy, that you won't either. But as we talked about why Prevent Child Abuse America had changed from a blue ribbon, which is our traditional, many of you that have been involved as long as I have remember that blue ribbon, to something more childlike, a pinwheel. And actually, the claim to fame of Prevent Child Abuse America is that it was the individual who actually developed the Happy Meal for McDonald's, who was a member of the Prevent Child Abuse America board, who had the great idea of developing a blue pinwheel. But one of the offenders came up to me after our presentation and said, you know what I love about a pinwheel? It takes action for a pinwheel to move. You can twirl it, you can blow it, you can run with it like children most often do. And he said, and you know what else? It takes action to touch the life of a child. And that's what this entire month has been about. You all are action champions. You are investing in learning the best possible best practices. You are committed to the neighbor next door, the person in your faith community, that individual that you see at the grocery store whose child is screaming on the floor, as my twins did many a time, because the candy bars were right there and we didn't want them to have those candy bars. You are the champions. You're the action that's making these pinwheels glow and blow throughout Child Abuse Prevention Month. And so we just wanted to remind you of that story as we start to close out this phenomenal month of the Indiana IU Northwest Prevention Forum, your efforts, your attendance, and the action that you've invested just in learning together, but the action we know that you're going to be a part of starting tomorrow, May Day. May Day is another great, holiday for children. Pick up a dandelion and give it to a child along with a pinwheel and let them know that you're there to act on their behalf. Wendy, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for that story. It's one of my favorites. So I am really proud to be here representing Prevent Child Abuse Lake County today. And we are a group of volunteers working together to raise awareness about child abuse and neglect prevention. And one of our signature events I'd like to turn your attention to is our annual Cherish the Children art contest, where we work with students and teachers from high schools and middle schools all over Lake County, where they're provided with a child's chair to design and decorate in the theme of cherishing children. We really give them no other parameters. What does childhood mean to you? How do you represent that artistically as a way to raise awareness? We've been doing this project for about 7 years now, and we partner with the Indiana Welcome Center. And this year, we unfortunately were not able to hold our event last year. However, this year we are moving virtual. You can see all of these beautiful chairs on display at the Indiana Welcome Center, which is open to the public. But you can also go to the Prevent Child Abuse Lake County Facebook page and learn a little bit more about our event and our Facebook Live event, where we highlight the chairs. And most importantly, we will have a virtual auction this year. So you will be able to go online and bid on these amazing chairs. And we use these funds to help raise awareness of child abuse and neglect prevention efforts in our community. I would like to, at this time, talk to you a little bit about our final award here today, which is the Dr. Richard Hugg Cherish the Children Award. This award was created to honor the legacy of Dr. Hugg, Professor Emeritus, one of my favorite professors at IUN, and also really the founding father of this forum event. Even though Dr. Hugg has been retired for many years, he is still working hard on behalf of our community's children and spearheads our ragtag group of volunteers to put the forum together every year. And we created this award in his honor. So it's my privilege to introduce to you Patty Van Til. Patty Van Til is a Prevent Child Abuse Lake County board member who is going to tell you a little bit more about our very special nominee.
It's a pleasure to be here, Wendy, and the forum has been as great as always. So getting right to the Cherish the Children Award, each year as we prepare to conclude the forum, we have the opportunity to present this award, the Cherish the Children Award. And I'm really proud to do that as a longtime member of the Board of Directors of Prevent Child Abuse Lake County. I've had the pleasure to know Congressman Frank Mervan for quite some time. And over the years, he has enjoyed following in the footsteps of his father, Indiana State Senator Frank Mervan, in his passion for public service. He spent nearly all his adult life serving the people of our community, and most recently with an emphasis on the children of Indiana. Frank graduated from the Hammond Schools and Ball State University. He first served on the North Township Board. From there, he was elected North Township trustee and served from 2005 to 2021. And now in 2021, we're honored that he is our congressman from the 1st Congressional District of Indiana, and we congratulate him for that. While Frank was the North Township trustee, he was personally involved in a local initiative addressing child sexual abuse. Congressman Mervan successfully implemented the No More Secrets law, which established a statewide mandate for educator and student training on how to detect child sexual abuse. With an understanding that Indiana once ranked as one of the top states for sexual abuse perpetrated against teen girls, Congressman Mervan sought to provide a clear avenue for the students to discuss their trauma with trusted individuals outside of the home where abuse often occurs. The No More Secrets law is based on the notion of teaching our most vulnerable population how to discern between a good secret, such as a surprise birthday party, versus a bad secret, such as a sexually abusive relationship. The No More Secrets campaign has been a gift to his wife, Jane, and the memory of her sister, Kelly. In 2017, the legislation was signed into law by Indiana Governor Holcomb. No More Secrets requires the Indiana Department of Education to provide materials and guidelines to schools for child sexual abuse response policies and reporting procedures, and expanded the grade levels for child abuse and sexual abuse education to grades K through 12. It also requires all school employees likely to have direct, ongoing contact with children to participate in training on child abuse and neglect at least once every 2 years. The No More Secrets is pivotal legislation for Indiana and has since helped our youth better understand and report the abuse they may experience. As a member on the House Education and Labor Committee Subcommittee for Civil Rights and Human Services, Congressman Mervan continues his dedication to protecting children by working with his colleagues on all matters related to child maltreatment, which are within the subcommittee's jurisdiction. Congressman Mervan is a loving father of 2 daughters, Genevieve and Scarlett Mervan, and he's always been active in their schooling, activities, and care. He's married to his high school sweetheart, Jane Mervan, who I think is in our audience. And now, while his job takes him to Washington, D.C., he enjoys it when his family can join him to spend time exploring the Washington, D.C. area and making things normal for their family. So today, as we think about the impact the No More Secrets legislation has had and will continue to have locally, we award Congressman Mervan the 2021 Cherish the Children Award by the Lake County Prevent Child Abuse Board of Directors. Congratulations, Congressman Mervan.
First and foremost, I thank you very much for this recognition, but I want it to be a point of emphasis that the award is wonderful, but the mission is most important. And identifying, protecting children and identifying child abuse and sexual abuse within our communities are extremely important so that we have difficult conversations. I have to wholeheartedly thank my wife who provided that letter, who I think is joining us here on this Zoom. It was through her as a survivor, making it perfectly clear that her mission and her intentions in the world was to make sure that people had conversations with their children to protect them against child molesters, and to make sure that we had conversations. And we turned that spark that was inspired by her sister Kelly, who also was a survivor, but who is no longer with us, to make a difference in the world and to use the platform of our elected office in the past that it truly was a drop of water that created a waterfall, which is the most important, the most powerful force in nature, where people came together in a collaborative effort to advocate for a cause, and that was to protect young children. And going forward, I just want you to know, as a member of Congress, this is a mission of mine. It's a mission that I hold close to my heart, because I know the impact that it has on families. I know the impact that it has had on our family. And I just want to make sure that we celebrate all those survivors that have had the courage to come forward and who have heard the words, "You are not alone," and that we take that pain that we often see, that quiet pain, and we turn it into action that protects and advocates for survivors, and also does everything we can to minimize abuse through campaigns and organizations such as yourself, Prevent Child Abuse Indiana, Prevent Child Abuse Lake County. All of those things are extremely important into our community. And I want to close with basic facts. During the pandemic, I have checked in with my local Child Protective Services with Ellis Dumas, and he says the numbers are down, and the numbers of reported cases are down because the kids aren't in school. And we should see a resurgence, because when kids return back to school, that's when the mandatory report laws and teachers and counselors and principals are able to identify abuse. And so I don't want to be fooled by those statistics because of the pandemic. I want to make sure that we are embracing all of those children and making sure that we are prepared for that going forward, of the isolation and anything the pandemic may bring. And as a member of Congress, we are consistently working on signing on to legislation to protect children and to protect those individuals who may be the most vulnerable. And if we could do anything on a daily basis to reduce the statistics of individuals 1 in 6 and 1 in 4 for boys and girls at certain ages, and sexual abuse in high schools, and going forward with sexual harassment. Those are things that are priorities for me. So to all of you, Wendy, I'm very humbled by this award, and I dedicate it to my sister-in-law, Kelly, who's no longer with us, and I dedicate it to my wife, Jane, through her advocacy as a quiet warrior survivor, who allowed me to tell her story and to open up those vulnerabilities out in the world. It wasn't an easy process, and it never is. But knowing that we're able to break ground and break through with conversations that sometimes are uncomfortable, the number of survivors who came forward during that campaign and still reach out to us is something that is extremely important to me and meaningful to my life, and know that we will do all that we can to use the power of our office to continue to advocate for those most vulnerable populations and protect children going forward.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for your remarks. No More Secrets was transformative for many students as they went through that program. And we are just grateful for your leadership and support. And we know that you're going to do great things. So thank you very much for being with us today.
And I thank you very much. And the most gratifying scenario is when you read in the paper that through the program of No More Secrets, someone who was going through that came forward and was able to receive the help that they need at a young age to overcome the challenges that they will have going forward and to get the mental health that they will need as a survivor. That is truly the great award, as you see. So I will cherish this. I will make sure that I will share it with my wife and my family, and know that it is greatly appreciated, but there is still a great amount of work to be done. And I want to partner up with your organization, with my staff, seeing what we can do on a federal level to protect children going forward, with all of our resources and power and might of the federal government as a member of Congress.
Thank you so much. Congressman Mervan mentioned action, and Melissa Merrick and Sharon Pierce all talked about action and the symbol of the pinwheel needing action to move. So we're going to leave you with that. We're going to all go out and find ways to be active in our community, to support children, to support families, and to make sure that we are growing a better tomorrow for all of our children. Thank you all for being here with us today, and enjoy the weekend.
Wendy, thank you very much.